Fred Beck from Fred Talks Fighting, and today I'm very lucky to be joined by Brendan Fitzgerald. So thank you very much for coming on, Brendan. It's good to see you, mate.
Hey, Fred. Sorry this took so long, but we got it done. Happy to be with you.
Yeah, so thanks for coming on. So what have you been up to then, Brendan? I see you're in, is that the UFC Performance Center you're in right now?
Yeah, this is the PI at the Apex. Let's see if I can flip my camera around. Nobody's in here, so I thought I'd just kind of come and, hey, this is the boxing ring right here. And, sometimes it's full of athletes, training and whatever, but it was empty. So I thought I'd give you the little special edition, special location.
Do you ever go and work out in that gym, hit the bag or any sparring or weights?
I used to go to the other one, the original PI. Employees could use it in the morning and in the afternoons, like certain hours. Since COVID happened, that's all been like shut down, I don't think they'd kick me out if I threw on a pair of gloves and went and hit the heavy bag over there. So maybe I'll try to find a time to sneak in, but for the most part with COVID, we haven't really been able to, but hopefully that's a thing in the future again.
Yeah, be good then. Employees will get back into shape, I guess, then.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we go back in time, all the way back to 2017, where you kind of originally started working for the UFC, if I'm correct in saying that. You previously worked for ESPN and Fox as well. And it was the time where you got released by ESPN, you started working for the UFC. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I was part of a pretty big layoff at ESPN. I was covering college sports, mostly football and basketball. And the layoffs happened in April of 2017, and the Contender Series launched that summer. So right when I was laid off, they were looking for broadcasters for the Contender Series. And my boss now called me up, saw that I was like let go, and brought me in for an audition. They did auditions for a bunch of broadcasters and fighters and stuff like that. And I did well enough on the audition where they gave me the call for the Contender Series. And then once I started calling fights that summer, it kind of lined up where they were looking for a new play-by-play announcer as like a, backup to John Anik. Anik had just taken over in the play-by-play role for the pay-per-views and all that. And so bit of good timing, bit of good luck. That came from some, I don't know if you call it bad luck, but something that's not great. Nobody wants to get laid off and lose their job, but mine led to working for the UFC. So got to be grateful for it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And have you had any experience before that, kind of working for any combat sport, doing any commentary for combat sport before?
No, I mean, like when I was younger in my career, I covered all sports because I worked for local news stations. So you're doing stories on any and all sports, high school sports, college sports, that sort of thing. So when I lived in different cities coming up through the ranks, I would cover state wrestling tournaments, and things like that, but never called a fight. Was rarely a play-by-play announcer. I mostly was a studio person doing highlights and talk shows, or presenter, as you call them over there. And but then I started getting into the play-by-play with the UFC, and I wasn't even really into MMA because I was covering other sports, football and basketball and these other things that dominate Saturdays. If you're into college football or college basketball, like that is Saturday wall to wall. There's hundreds of games. So for me to like keep tabs on that and keep track of all that, man, I didn't really have time for the UFC, and now I've poured myself into the UFC and never found a better sport to cover. Like became an immediate fan, loved it. I was just like, oh, where has this been all my life? So it doesn't matter when you find what you love, it just matters that you find it.
Well, you watched a lot of events in your time working for the UFC. One that springs to mind, which really got quite crazy, was one in Mexico City between Yaya Rodriguez and Jeremy Stevens, where when the fight got called off, and then all the fans were chucking stuff at you. Didn't you have to hide on the table there, hide under the comments?
I mean, I didn't have to, but I did. That's like, the famous thing, oddly enough, it's a Yair Rodriguez fight week. So he's back for the first time since a month after that when they ran it back. But yeah, like what happened with that was I looked to my left and I saw a bunch of stuff coming down. It was all beer and cups. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't inherently dangerous, but I didn't feel like getting showered with beer. And also I had to kind of keep talking on the broadcast. So I was like, let me just, really what it was if I sat under the table and looked out, I could shield myself on all sides, basically, except for, I could see what's coming at me and I don't have to worry about anything hitting me in the back. If I kind of was like turn this way and standing up, or turn this way, then I could get splashed and whatever. I just didn't want it to be affected as I kind of walked the viewers through what was going on in there. I still had the, it wasn't calling a fight, but it was like play by play of the scene, because you don't go to commercial when something like that happens. You nobody's going to change the channel. You just got to stick on it and let the pictures do the talking and whatever. So that was why I went under the table. Bisping gets out his phone. He puts me on Instagram stories. Everybody has a good laugh about it. Then the video, the broadcast booth video comes out after the fact. And it's a good thing I can laugh at myself. I really don't. I think it's funny. And everybody else does too. So that's fine.
Yeah, being able to laugh at yourself is one of the best skills, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you think that's like one of your craziest kind of moments commentating then in Mexico City?
I mean, that's certainly, you're asking me about it, 2 years later, you know what I mean? Like that's the one where people still ask me about it a lot. It's like, we've done some great events. Like I called the 25th anniversary show in Denver. That, oddly enough, Yair Rodriguez, the upward elbow.
Yeah, I was about to say that was him as well.
Yeah. And Cerrone setting the record. And like, I've called like great events. Zhang Weili winning the title in China. Like I've called some great moments, but there was nothing like that was that chaotic like that was, and I don't know, I'm sure, who knows if it'll happen again. It's like, it just lined up where it was a no contest in the main event. You know what I mean? After 15 seconds, like, I wonder if Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad was in a full arena, if there might've been beers being chucked then too, after a no contest eye poke. But, it's the fight game, man. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it certainly is. And as a commentator, how many kind of stats and facts and preparation you should do before each event?
What I try to know more about the story of the fighters. Anybody can look up the stats. Now, certainly I have the stats, but I'm not going back. We have a great production team. And so we get the information given to us, and I put it on my notes. I have a special kind of note sheet that I use that I've kind of created, and I have a different one for each fighter. So it's valuable to know in 15 wins, the guy has 12 knockouts. That's valuable to know, but it's not the whole story. It's much more meaningful if he just had a baby 3 weeks ago and he's fighting, or, if he is from Brazil, but moved to the United States, hasn't seen his family in 5 years. Those types of stories to me are more of my job, and telling the story of the person instead of just the stats. The stats are an easy add-on and good to have at the ready for different trends in fights and how they fight. Once the fight starts, then you can kind of get into the numbers, what they do well. But in terms of like introducing the fighter and like what they want, I try to know more about their journey, their story, who they are as people, what's important to them.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there. The stories kind of do get a lot of people invested in the fight as well, especially the casual fans, which is kind of quite important. And as a commentator as well, how do you make sure you don't talk over each other? Because it never really seems to happen at all.
Yeah. Well, listen closer. It does happen. It's just like, there's just a certain ebb and a flow to it, like once, and it takes working with somebody, like I feel like me and Bisping probably talked over each other. If we went back to look at the earlier shows that we did early 2019, I bet we were talking over each other a good bit. You know what I mean? Not like in a horrible way, and not like we're trying to be the star, just like we hadn't found that flow yet. And now that we've worked together, I know how he works. He knows how I work. Like, I know that Bisping can talk a lot, and what he has to say is very valuable, or it's funny. Like, he's a big star. So when he's going, let him go. You know what I mean? And don't try to come in and grab it, and then when he's done, then I can kind of come in with my next thing. So it just takes chemistry and finding the flow. It's like when you're with your friends, you don't all talk at the same time. You're having a conversation about something, or you're watching something on TV together, and when you're talking about something and then somebody else does, and that's just the same thing. You just have to kind of find the flow of who you're working with.
Okay, that's quite a good analogy, actually, using the friends in there. And I was listening to Michael Bisping's podcast, and you were on it in the most recent episode. What was that?
Yeah. So that was good. Like, obviously,
But that's your second time. That's your second time being on the podcast, isn't it?
I was on a podcast as the guest before.
Yeah.
Actually, it was right after.
I remember listening to that episode. Yeah.
And so, I was on it just for 20 minutes or whatever, and we talked about that. But this week it was great. He asked me to come on and be a co-host. Obviously, like with his podcast, he's not with Lewis anymore as the co-host. So right now he's using revolving co-hosts, and the fans seem to like it. Like, obviously we have a good chemistry on the air together. And so I told him, I was just like, hey, if you want me to join in with the podcast, like, I'm happy to join you anytime. And he was good with it. And it was cool to like do it over a longer time, 2 hours on it, and chat back and forth and recap the crazy event, UFC 268. There was plenty to talk about. And then we're on the call this week. So we always have fun.
And I know that you went the opposite way as well, because he was on your podcast at Fitz Nation. And how often do you do your podcast? Because I was looking at some of the guests you've had on. You've had some quite good people on.
Yeah, thanks. I've actually taken a break from it. I'll probably fire it up either like in December, or I might just wait to go through the new year. My October got super busy. I called, like, in the span of 30 days, I called 4 episodes of the Contender Series, and I had 3 UFC play-by-play cards, and we had some of the gambling show. So October, my head was spinning. I was just like, I just can't do my interviews for my podcast. And I said, let me just take a break. Maybe I'll come back in November. And now I'm like, maybe I'll get through the holidays, give it a good break, want to do it again. But yeah, like, my podcast is pretty unique. It's not a recap of the events. It's not a preview of the events. I have a guest on, and I interview them about their life, about their career, about how they've achieved to a high level. It's kind of turned into an achievement kind of conversation. Like, Bisping obviously came from Clitheroe, small town. He served some time behind bars. You know what I mean? Like, he was looking for something to do. He comes from pretty humble beginnings in terms of his family and his background, and lack of a career path. And he's living in Southern California. He's got NFTs. He's got a successful podcast. He's an actor. He's a UFC world champion. He's a commentator. Like, business is booming for Bisping. So, when I have somebody like that on my podcast, I want to know, how did you do that? What was your mindset doing that? What were the changes along the way that led you to all this success? And the fighters that are going to be in the UFC are going to have that, whether they're a prelim fighter or whether they're a main event fighter or a champion. They're all going to have some story of battling adversity, coming out on the other side, and finding some success. So that's been the conversations that I've had, and it's still gaining. It's still this small podcast, the little engine that could. But I love doing it. It's very good for my job too. It's very good to get to know the fighters on a more personal level. So I'm going to keep doing it. Probably look for it to fire back up in January, and long form conversations. But all the episodes are there on YouTube, and they still apply. You know what I mean? Even like Yair Rodriguez, I talked to in 2020, I think February of 2020. You could listen. He hasn't fought since then. You could listen to that podcast today. You know what I mean? It's like episode 21 or 22 or whatever. The long form conversations still hold up. Yeah.
I'm guessing you still upload clips, and you still kind of been uploading on the YouTube channel as well, though, because you've done some clips when you walk around the octagon and stuff, right?
Yeah. So I realized at first my podcast was audio only. I was just like, let me just keep it simple, audio only. Then I was like, well, what if I just hit go on like a video camera? And oddly enough, it's pretty tough when you're in person with them. It's much easier in this format, right? Because you just hit Zoom, hit record, and then they give it to you. So I was like, okay, let me start doing that. And then I put it on YouTube. And then I was like, well, let me put some clips on. Like, sometimes you can have time for a 3 to 5 minute clip, but you can't listen to a 52-minute interview. And then I thought, well, YouTube is good for a lot more than just my podcast. Like, I have access to, like, I could walk around this PI right now, turn my camera on, and be like, behind the scenes look on my YouTube channel. I have access to a lot of spaces that fight fans like to see, a lot of people. Like I talked to Felder on my YouTube channel. I was like, Felder, are you coming back? Right. And then that like made headlines because he And so I've just expanded my YouTube channel into being just kind of a fun stop for any fight fan. You know what I mean? If you're a UFC fan, obviously, I'm a play-by-play broadcaster, so like I have a pretty unique insight into what goes on. I'll give you some fights to look at that I'm looking out for this week, or just short little clips like that, or I'll give you behind the scenes looks. I'm just adding to it in different creative ways.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think a lot of people do like it when you see kind of behind the scenes of the UFC and what's kind of going on. Before I know, you haven't got a huge amount of time. So before I let it go, I just want to get your thoughts on one fight: Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier. What are your thoughts on that matchup? That's happening in December.
Yeah. I mean, I love the fight. This is where I'm not the best guest because I don't pick fights. So I hate to it's like, what can I say? You know what I mean?
Can you pick fights though? Because it's the fights you're working, you can't pick, but Bisping always picks the fights.
Yeah. So Bisping's job is to have an opinion. You know what I mean? Like, it's fighters' jobs to have an opinion. Now, with fighters like Bisping or Felder or DC, they don't pick fights when they're on the call. You know what I mean? They don't make their picks for fights when they're on the call. But Bisping, for like UFC 268, he was not calling the fight. So he's all good to make picks. I guess I could make picks for a fight night that I'm not calling, but I just don't want to dip my toe in that water. You know what I mean? Like, what if I pick against Colby and then the next time he fights, it's in the main event and I'm calling it. And he's just like, you picked against me, F you. Like, I want to keep on good terms with all the fighters.
You don't want to burn any. That's what I kind of say. Because sometimes people ask me, "Oh, who do you think is going to win?" And I say, "Oh, no comment. I don't want to burn any bridges."
Yeah, and but I have a job where I can do that because my job is to be impartial, play-by-play announcer. That's the most important thing that I do. So I don't want to burn any bridges with the fighters. But if you're going to be like a podcaster, then you should have opinions. You shouldn't worry about burning bridges because otherwise it's just boring to say Oliveira and Poirier. Oh man, it's a great fight. Poirier is awesome. Charles Oliveira is awesome. It's for the belt. I can't wait. It's going to be a great fight. It's just like, yeah, everybody can say that. We all know that. But if you're not going to take a side and pick, now in my head, I have a feeling of who I think is going to win the fight, but I don't know. I mean, that's one where it's just I don't have a strong conviction on who's going to win. It's the perfect matchup. It's the only matchup that could be made for that title. And then the winner gets Gaethje. The fight game rarely goes according to plan, but if it went according to plan in this case and winner, good fight, winner gets Gaethje, whether it's a Poirier rematch or whether it's Oliveira, I love it.
Yeah, certainly is. It's good. It's good 50-50 fight, which is what combat sports always needs. And just one thing on your YouTube channel, have you ever thought, I always see loads of kind of combat sport related YouTube channels doing this, is where they kind of they have a camera set up as they're watching the fights and they're doing live streams, live reactions. Yeah. People doing that for the fights you're not working for your YouTube channel.
I don't know. I mean, usually when I've watched the fights, I don't know if people, since I work for the UFC, I feel like I wouldn't want to take away from the broadcast. You know what I mean? I guess it could be a second screen thing. What I've been doing more recently, I didn't do it for the New York card, but I did it for Abu Dhabi.
The fights you're not, sorry to interrupt. I mean, the fights are not working when you're at home watching in your living room. You can have a live stream. I know it sounds ridiculous, but they do get quite a few views on YouTube.
They do. But what I'm saying is, even when I am at home, I feel like, well, do you mean putting it after the fact?
Oh, yeah, after the fact or during or live.
Or just during, right? Like a live stream. I know I've seen that. I've joined some other live streams during big events that I'm not working and I'll come on and watch along. But I don't know. Maybe that's the next step. Good idea, Fred. Maybe I'll try that sometime. What I did for Abu Dhabi is I watched it, and then right after I made a video of here's my reaction, explaining things. It wasn't my reaction to watching the fights. It was this is my thoughts on the main event. This is my thoughts on Hamzat Chimaev, whatever. And I uploaded that right after. So that's probably more of what I would do on my YouTube channel is immediate thoughts and a reaction about what just happened instead of watch along. But that show on Fight Pass, Watch Party? Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it.
They wanted me for the International Fight Week for the Volkanovski Ortega. They asked me if I could go down to Bisping's house and do an episode. But like he lives in California and I would have had to get on a plane like the next morning. It was like super late ass. I was just like, let me know with more ahead of time. I'll do it. Like, I can't wait. That would be a blast, but I can't do that. So I'll probably be on an episode of Watch Party at some point, which will be on Fight Pass. And hopefully it'll be with like Bisping or another fighter or some, it'll be a blast.
Yeah, sure, be quite entertaining to watch. But all right, Brendan,
Yeah.
I'm taking too much of time off already, but thanks so much for your time.
Yeah.
I do really appreciate it. I'll put your YouTube channel link in the description, but if you've got anything else coming up, want to shout out, where can people find you on Instagram and Twitter at?
Awesome, man. I'm at Brendan Fitz TV on social media, and find the YouTube channel. I appreciate you linking that, Fred. Great to chat with you, man. Keep going strong. How old are you, Fred?
I'm 17.
17. You're gonna be my boss by the time you're 30, probably.
Well, how old are you?
I'm 39.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, but I always appreciate because I wanted to be like a broadcaster since I was a little kid, younger than 10 years old. So I just love when kids are teenagers, the technology that we have these days, like the fact that you have YouTube and Zoom and whatever, and you can reach out. Like, you know what I mean? It's amazing. So I'm always like proud of people your age, the next generation who are doing everything they can the right way. Keep going.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. It means a lot coming from you. I'm sure we'll catch up soon then, but thanks so much for your time. I do really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.